Daniel Reed stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker to life as evening settled over downtown. His phone buzzed for the 100th time that day, but he ignored it. At 32, he'd built a software company worth over $3 billion, yet tonight, none of it seemed to matter. 3 months. That's how long it had been since Rebecca walked out of his life. 3 months since she'd disappeared without a trace, taking their unborn twins with her. He could still remember that last conversation like it happened yesterday. They'd been planning their wedding, picking out flowers and debating whether to have the ceremony at his family's estate or somewhere more intimate. Everything seemed perfect, or at least he thought it was perfect. "Your mother called again," Rebecca had said that morning, her voice tired. She was 6 months pregnant, her belly round with their babies, and she looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usual bright smile had faded weeks ago. What did she want this time? Daniel had asked, barely looking up from his laptop. He was closing a major deal with investors from Tokyo, and the time zone difference meant he'd been up since 4 in the morning. She wants to change the wedding venue. Again. She says the country club isn't prestigious. Enough. Rebecca's hands had trembled slightly as she poured herself a glass of water. "Daniel, can we please talk?" "Really talk?" "Becca, not now. I've got this conference call in 10 minutes, and I still haven't reviewed the contracts." He'd glanced at his watch, already mentally reviewing his talking points for the meeting. "It's always not now," she'd said quietly. "We need to discuss your mother. She's taking over everything. The wedding, the nursery, even the names we picked for the babies. Yesterday she told me the names we chose weren't sophisticated enough for Reed family children." Daniel had sighed, feeling the familiar pressure building behind his eyes. "She's just excited. She's always been particular about family traditions. Just let her have this, okay? It makes her happy." "What about what makes me happy?" Rebecca's voice had cracked then. "What about what makes us happy? We'll talk about it tonight, I promise. After my meeting." But there had been another meeting after that one, and another after that. By the time Daniel got home that night, it was past midnight. Rebecca was already in bed, or so he thought. He'd assumed she was sleeping when he finally crawled under the covers at 2 in the morning. When he woke up at 6, she was gone. Her closet was half empty. The suitcase they'd bought for their honeymoon was missing. On the kitchen counter, he found her engagement ring and a simple note written on a torn piece of paper. "I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Please don't look for me." That was it. No explanation. No forwarding address, nothing. Daniel had called her phone immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. He'd called her best friend, her sister, even her parents. No one knew where she was. Or if they did, they weren't telling him. Her parents had been polite but cold. If Rebecca left, she must have had her reasons, her mother had said. "Our daughter isn't the type to run away without cause." He'd driven to her parents' house in the suburbs, but they wouldn't let him pass the front door. Her father had stood on the porch, arms crossed, and said, "She doesn't want to see you. Respect her decision." "But the babies," Daniel had pleaded. "Those are my children too. She can't just take them and disappear." "She's doing what she thinks is best," her mother had replied from behind her husband. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "Sometimes love isn't enough, Daniel. Sometimes people need more than money and promises." He'd hired 3 different private investigators. The first one found nothing. The second one traced her to a bus station 2 states away. Then the trail went cold. The third investigator, the most expensive one who came highly recommended, reported back after 6 weeks with the same news. Rebecca had vanished completely. No credit card transactions. No social media activity. No phone records. She'd withdrawn $5,000 from their joint account the day before she left, and after that, nothing. It was like she'd simply ceased to exist. Daniel's mother, Catherine Reed, hadn't seemed particularly upset by Rebecca's departure. "Perhaps it's for the best," she'd said over lunch one afternoon, barely looking up from her salad. "The girl was never quite right for our family. Too simple. Too ordinary. She was carrying my children, Mom, your grandchildren." Was she, though? Catherine had raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Did you ever actually see proof? Did you go to the doctor's appointments with her?" The question had hit him like a punch to the gut. The truth was he'd missed most of the appointments. Work had always seemed more urgent, more important. Rebecca had gone to them alone, coming home with ultrasound pictures that he'd glanced at briefly before getting back to his emails. She wasn't lying about being pregnant, Daniel had said firmly. I saw the ultrasound images. Twin boys. Images can be faked, darling. I'm not saying she did, I'm just saying you should consider all possibilities. Catherine had patted his hand like he was a child. Perhaps she realized she wasn't ready for motherhood. Perhaps she made a different choice. The insinuation had made Daniel sick, but a small dark part of his mind had wondered, why else would Rebecca run? Why else would she cut off all contact so completely? As weeks turned into months, Daniel threw himself into work. He expanded the company, acquired 2 smaller competitors, and launched a new product line that pushed their stock prices even higher. The business magazines loved him. Forbes put him on their cover with the headline, "The Billionaire Who Never Sleeps." They didn't know he wasn't sleeping because every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rebecca's face. He heard the exhaustion in her voice when she'd asked him to talk. He remembered all the times he'd chosen his laptop over her, meetings over meals together, his mother's opinions over her feelings. Late at night in his empty penthouse, Daniel would pull out the box he kept hidden in his desk drawer. Inside were the ultrasound pictures Rebecca had left behind. 2 tiny shapes curled together in her womb. His sons, their sons. He'd trace his finger over the grainy images and wonder where they were now. Were they born yet? Were they healthy? Did they have his eyes or Rebecca's smile? Would they ever know they had a father who thought about them every single day? His friends told him to move on. His business partners said he was lucky to have dodged a bullet. His mother kept introducing him to daughters of her wealthy friends, women who wore designer clothes and spoke multiple languages and would never dream of running away. But Daniel didn't want any of them. He wanted Rebecca with her simple dresses and bright laugh. He wanted the life they'd planned together, the family they were supposed to build. 10 years. That's how long Daniel would wait before the phone call that would change everything. 10 long years of wondering, searching, and trying to fill the empty spaces Rebecca and their children had left behind. He didn't know it yet, but everything he thought he understood about why she left was wrong, and when the truth finally came out, it would shatter his world all over again. Daniel was in the middle of a board meeting when his personal phone rang. He normally kept it on silent during important meetings, but something made him glance at the screen. Unknown number. Seattle area code. He ignored it and continued presenting the quarterly earnings report. The phone rang again immediately. Same number. Excuse me for just a moment, he said to the 12 executives seated around the conference table. Stepping into the hallway, he answered with an irritated, "This is Daniel Reed." "Mr. Reed, this is Julie Chen from Seattle Children's Hospital." The woman's voice was professional but urgent. "I'm calling about a patient who was brought in this morning after a serious car accident." Daniel's heart started pounding. "I think you have the wrong number. I don't know anyone in Seattle. Sir, the patient gave us your name and this number before she lost consciousness. Her name is Rebecca Martinez. Does that name mean anything to you?" The floor seemed to tilt beneath Daniel's feet. Rebecca. After 10 years of silence, her name spoken out loud felt like a ghost coming back to life. "Is she okay? What happened?" The words tumbled out before he could think. "She's in critical condition, Mr. Reed. She suffered severe injuries in the collision. But, sir, there's something else you need to know." The nurse paused, and Daniel could hear papers rustling in the background. She wasn't alone in the car. There were 2 children with her. Twins, a boy and a girl, 9 years old. They're physically unharmed, but they're very frightened and asking for their mother. 9 years old. Daniel did the math instantly. They would have been born about 10 years ago, right around when Rebecca disappeared. His breath caught in his throat. "Mr. Reed, are you still there?" "Yes, I'm here." "Are you saying these children are—" "We're not making any assumptions, but when we asked the children their mother's name, they said Rebecca Blackwood. The girl said her last name used to be Martinez, but her mom told them their real last name was Blackwood." "Your last name, sir?" Daniel gripped the edge of a nearby table to steady himself. "I'll be on the next flight to Seattle. Can you tell me which hospital?" After getting the details, Daniel walked back into the boardroom. All eyes turned to him, but he barely saw them. "I have a family emergency. Michael, take over the meeting. I'll be out of town for a few days." He was in his car within minutes, calling his pilot to prep the jet. His assistant scrambled to clear his schedule while Daniel sat in the back seat, his mind racing through a decade of questions that might finally have answers. The 5-hour flight felt like 50. Daniel couldn't sit still. He paced the cabin, tried to read reports, attempted to sleep, but nothing worked. Rebecca was alive. His children existed. They were real, not just shapes in an ultrasound photo he'd kept in a drawer for 10 years. But why had she used his last name? Why had she told them they were Blackwoods if she'd run away from him? None of it made sense. When the plane finally touched down in Seattle, Daniel headed straight to the hospital. The fluorescent lights of the emergency wing made everything look harsh and surreal. A nurse directed him to the intensive care unit, where another nurse, the one he'd spoken to on the phone, was waiting. "Mr. Reed? I'm Julie. Thank you for coming so quickly." She looked tired, like she'd been on shift for too long. "Before you see the children, I should tell you that Rebecca is still unconscious. The doctors are monitoring her closely. She has a severe concussion, 3 broken ribs, and internal bleeding that they managed to stop in surgery this morning. Can I see her?" "In a moment. But the children are asking questions we can't answer. They're scared and confused. They keep asking why their mom won't wake up." Julie led him down a hallway to a small waiting room. "They're in here. I should warn you, they don't know about you. When we asked if we should call their father, they both said they don't have one." The words stung more than Daniel expected. He took a deep breath and nodded. Julie opened the door and Daniel stepped inside. 2 children sat on a vinyl couch that was too big for them. The girl had Rebecca's dark curly hair pulled into a messy ponytail. The boy had straight brown hair that fell over his forehead. But their eyes, both of them had Daniel's eyes. The same dark brown color, the same shape. It was like looking at childhood photos of himself. "Sophie, Nathan, this is Mr. Reed," Julie said gently. "He's someone who knew your mom a long time ago." The girl, Sophie, looked at him with suspicion written all over her face. "How did you know our mom?" Daniel sat down carefully in a chair across from them, not wanting to crowd them. "We were friends a long time ago before you were born." "Then where have you been?" Sophie's voice was sharp, protective. She put her arm around her brother. "Mom never mentioned you." Nathan, the quieter one, studied Daniel with an intensity that was unsettling in a 9-year-old. "You have the same eyes as us," he said finally. "I do," Daniel admitted, his voice catching. "Are you our dad?" Sophie asked bluntly. "Is that why they called you?" Daniel didn't know how to answer. He didn't want to lie, but he didn't want to overwhelm them either. "I think I might be, but I didn't know about you until today. I promise you that." "That's a lie," Sophie said fiercely. "Moms don't just forget to tell dads they have kids." "Sophie," Nathan said quietly, tugging on her sleeve. "No, Mom told us our dad didn't want us. She said he chose other things over us. She said he let mean people hurt her, so she had to leave." Tears filled Sophie's eyes, but she blinked them back angrily. Daniel felt like he'd been punched. "What? That's not... I didn't know she left because someone hurt her. She just disappeared." "I looked for her everywhere." "You're lying," Sophie insisted, but her voice wavered. Nathan spoke up, his voice soft but clear. "What's your last name?" "Reed. Daniel Reed." "Mom said our real last name is Reed. She said we're Sophie and Nathan Reed." Nathan looked at his sister. "Remember? She said one day we'd understand why she changed it, but that Reed was our real name." Sophie's anger crumbled. "I want my mom. Why won't she wake up?" Before Daniel could respond, a doctor appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Reed, can I speak with you for a moment?" Daniel stepped into the hallway, his heart hammering. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, got straight to the point. "Rebecca is awake. She's very weak and in considerable pain, but she's conscious. She's asking about the children. Are they okay? That's all she wants to know. Can I see her?" The doctor hesitated. "She knows you're here. The nurse told her you came. Mr. Reed, I don't know what your relationship is with this woman, but I need you to understand that she's in a very fragile state. Don't upset her." Daniel followed the doctor to Rebecca's room. She looked so small in the hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. But when she saw him, that one good eye widened with something that looked like fear. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He stepped closer, his hands shaking. "Rebecca, I've been looking for you for 10 years. The kids.
Are they okay?"
"They're fine. Not a scratch on them. They're scared for you, but they're safe." Rebecca closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I was going to tell them about you when they were older. I was going to explain everything." "Explain what?" "Rebecca, why did you leave? Why did you take our children and disappear? She turned her head away. Your mother. What about my mother? She told me if I didn't leave, she'd destroy my family. My parents, my siblings, everyone I loved. Rebecca's voice broke. She said she'd have my parents deported. She said she'd ruin my sister's life, get her expelled from college. She had photos, Daniel. Photos of my father's paperwork, my mother's visa documents. She knew everything. Daniel's blood ran cold. That's not possible. My mother wouldn't. She did. She gave me 24 hours to disappear. She said if I told you, she'd do it anyway. She said you'd never believe me over her. Rebecca's breathing was labored, the machines beeping faster. I had to protect them. I had to protect our babies. A nurse rushed in, checking the monitors. You need to leave. She needs to rest, but Daniel couldn't move. His world was spinning. Everything he'd believed for 10 years was a lie. His mother hadn't been trying to protect him. She'd been the reason Rebecca left. She'd been the reason he'd lost his children's first 9 years. I'll fix this, he said to Rebecca as the nurse ushered him out. I promise you, I'll fix everything. Walking back to where Sophie and Nathan waited, Daniel felt a rage building inside him that he'd never experienced before. But looking at his children, their scared faces waiting for news about their mother, he pushed the anger down. They needed him to be calm. They needed him to be strong. Your mom is awake, he told them. She's going to be okay. Sophie and Nathan exhaled in relief, reaching for each other's hands. And in that moment, watching his children comfort each other, Daniel made a silent vow. He would make up for every lost day, every missed moment, and his mother would answer for what she'd done. Daniel sat in the hospital cafeteria at 2 a.m, staring at his phone. Sophie and Nathan were finally asleep in the room the hospital had provided for them. Rebecca was stable but still heavily medicated, and he was about to make the hardest phone call of his life. His mother answered on the 3rd ring, her voice sharp even at this hour. Daniel, do you have any idea what time it is? I found them, Mom. I found Rebecca and my children. There was a long pause. When Catherine spoke again, her voice was careful, controlled. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Not anymore. Daniel's hand clenched around the phone. Rebecca told me everything. About the threats. About my children's grandparents. About why she really left. That woman is clearly delusional. She abandoned you and now she's making up stories to... Stop. Daniel's voice was cold. Just stop. I want to hear it from you. Did you threaten her? Did you force her to leave? Another pause. Then Catherine sighed, and when she spoke, there wasn't even a hint of remorse in her voice. I did what any mother would do. I protected my son from making the biggest mistake of his life. Daniel felt sick. She was carrying my children. She was a nobody from a working-class family with immigration issues. Do you have any idea what the tabloids would have done with that? What it would have done to our reputation? To the company's image? Catherine's voice rose slightly. You were too blinded by infatuation to see clearly. Someone had to think about the future. Those are my children. My sons, my daughter and son. And you stole 10 years of their lives from me. I gave you 10 years to build an empire without distraction, Catherine countered. Look at what you've accomplished. Would you have done any of that with a crying baby on each hip and a wife who couldn't even afford a decent haircut? Daniel had never wanted to scream at someone so badly in his life. You're not my mother anymore. You're nothing to me. I want you out of my life, out of the company, out of everything. Don't be dramatic, Daniel. We can discuss this when you're calmer. There's nothing to discuss. My lawyers will contact you about removing you from the board. Don't call me. Don't come near my children. If you try to contact Rebecca or her family, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you did. He ended the call before she could respond. His hands were shaking. He'd never stood up to his mother like that before. For 30 years, he'd let her guide his decisions, influence his choices, run his life, and it had cost him everything that mattered. The next morning, Daniel found Sophie and Nathan in Rebecca's room. The kids were sitting on chairs they'd pulled close to her bed, holding her hands. Rebecca looked better than she had the night before, more alert despite the pain medication. Hey, Daniel said softly from the doorway. Sophie looked up, her expression guarded. Nathan gave him a small nod. Can we talk? Daniel asked. All of us? Rebecca nodded weakly. Kids, it's okay. Daniel pulled up another chair, trying to figure out where to start. I spoke to my mother last night. She admitted what she did. I'm so sorry, Rebecca. If I had known, I know. Rebecca interrupted. I never blamed you. I blame myself for not being strong enough to fight back. You were protecting your family. There's nothing weak about that. Daniel looked at Sophie and Nathan. I want you both to know something. I didn't abandon you. I didn't know you existed. Your mom didn't leave because I didn't want you. She left because someone very cruel threatened people she loved. Sophie's jaw was tight. Your mom did that? Yes. And I've cut her out of my life completely. She'll never hurt any of you again. Why should we believe you? Sophie asked. You're rich. Rich people always protect each other. It was Nathan who spoke up, surprising everyone. He has sad eyes, Sophie. Like Mom's eyes when she thinks we're not looking. Daniel felt his throat tighten. This quiet 9-year-old boy saw more than most adults. Rebecca squeezed Nathan's hand. Your father is a good man. He just didn't know. And I'm sorry I kept you from him. I thought I was doing the right thing, but maybe I was just scared. What happens now? Sophie asked, the question hanging in the air. Daniel took a breath. That's up to your mom. But I want to be in your lives. I want to know you. I want to be your dad if you'll let me. He looked at Rebecca. And I want to help. With everything. Medical bills, a place to stay, whatever you need. We don't need your money, Sophie said quickly, that protective edge back in her voice. Sophie, Rebecca said gently, we do need help right now. And it's okay to accept it. Over the next few days, Daniel learned more about his children's lives than he'd ever imagined. Rebecca had been working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Sophie was fiercely protective of her brother and got into fights at school defending him from bullies. Nathan loved to draw but never showed anyone his artwork because he was shy about it. They lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a rough neighborhood. Rebecca's car, the one that had crashed, was 15 years old. The brakes had failed going down a hill. If the timing had been different, if they'd been going faster, all 3 of them might have died. The thought made Daniel's blood run cold every time it crossed his mind. Sophie remained suspicious of him, questioning everything. When he brought them clothes from a nearby store, she asked how he knew their sizes. When he bought them lunch, she wanted to know if he was trying to bribe them into liking him. When he showed them pictures of himself as a kid, she studied them carefully, looking for proof that he was really their father. Nathan was different. He observed quietly, asked thoughtful questions, and slowly started opening up. One afternoon, while Sophie was in the bathroom, Nathan showed Daniel his sketchbook. The drawings were incredible, detailed landscapes, portraits, scenes from his imagination. These are amazing, Nathan. You're really talented. Nathan ducked his head, embarrassed. Mom says I get it from her dad. He used to paint before he got too sick. I'd love to meet your grandfather someday. Nathan looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Really? Mom's always scared to let us visit too much. She says she doesn't want to be a burden on them. Daniel made a mental note to change that situation too. Rebecca was released from the hospital after a week. Daniel had rented a house for them. Nothing too fancy because he didn't want to overwhelm them, but comfortable and in a safe neighborhood. When he showed it to Rebecca, she cried, "This is too much, Daniel. It's not enough. It'll never be enough to make up for what you've been through." Sophie walked through the house with her arms crossed, examining everything like she was looking for hidden cameras or traps. Nathan went straight to one of the bedrooms and stood at the window, looking out at the backyard with a small smile. "There's a tree," he said quietly. "I always wanted a yard with a tree." That night, after the kids were settled in their new rooms, Daniel and Rebecca sat in the living room. The silence between them was heavy with 10 years of unsaid things. "I don't expect anything from you," Daniel finally said. "I know too much has happened. Too much time has passed. But I meant what I said. I want to be here for the kids. I want to learn how to be their father." Rebecca studied his face, and he could see her trying to reconcile the man she'd loved with the man sitting in front of her now. They need time. Sophie especially. She's been the protective one her whole life. She won't trust easily. I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes. What about your company? Your life back home? I can work from anywhere. And right now my life is here, with you and the kids. If you'll let me stay? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. 10 years ago I loved you so much it hurt. Then I spent 10 years trying to forget you, trying to convince myself that leaving was the right choice. And now you're here and I don't know what to feel. You don't have to know right now. We can figure it out together. One day at a time, she nodded slowly. One day at a time. From the hallway, neither of them noticed Sophie standing in the shadows listening to every word. She wanted to hate this man who'd appeared out of nowhere. She wanted to protect her mother and brother from getting hurt again. But she'd also seen the way he looked at them, like they were the most important people in the world, and that scared her more than anything. Because Sophie had spent 9 years believing that nobody cared about them except each other. And if that wasn't true anymore, then everything she thought she knew about the world was wrong. She went back to her room, climbed into the first real bed she'd had in years, and let herself cry. For the mom who'd sacrificed everything, for the brother who deserved better, and maybe, just maybe, for the father they'd just found. 3 weeks into their new life, Sophie finally exploded. It happened at dinner. Daniel had cooked pasta, trying his best even though he'd never been much of a cook. Rebecca was still recovering, resting on the couch. Nathan was setting the table, humming softly to himself. Everything seemed peaceful. Then Sophie slammed her fork down. "Stop pretending." Daniel looked up from the stove, confused. "What?" "Stop pretending like you're suddenly this perfect dad who cooks dinner and cares about us. You don't know us. You don't know what we like or what we hate or what scares us at night." Her voice was shaking. "You're just here because you feel guilty." "Sophie," Rebecca called from the living room, trying to sit up. "No, Mom. I'm tired of everyone acting like this is normal. Like we should just be happy because he showed up with money and a nice house." Sophie's eyes were bright with tears. "Where were you when Mom was working double shifts and coming home so tired she could barely stand? Where were you when Nathan got sick and we couldn't afford the doctor? Where were you when the kids at school made fun of our clothes?" Daniel set down the spoon he was holding. His heart was pounding, but he kept his voice calm. "You're right. I wasn't there. And I hate that more than you could possibly know. You don't get to hate it. You didn't live it." Sophie stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "Nathan might believe you care, but I don't. You're just going to leave eventually anyway. Rich people always do." She ran to her room and slammed the door. Nathan looked down at his plate, his shoulders hunched. Rebecca had tears streaming down her face, and Daniel felt like he'd been hit by a truck. "I'll go talk to her," Rebecca said, trying to stand. "No." Daniel gently guided her back to the couch. "Let me, please." He walked to Sophie's door and knocked softly. "Sophie, can I come in?" "Go away. I'm going to sit right here until you let me in." Even if it takes all night, there was silence. Then, after what felt like forever, he heard the lock click. Daniel pushed the door open slowly. Sophie was sitting on her bed, hugging a worn stuffed rabbit that looked like it had been loved for years. Her face was red and blotchy from crying. Daniel sat on the floor, not on the bed, giving her space. "That rabbit looks special. Mom got it for me when Nathan and I were born. She said she bought 2, 1 for each of us, but I lost mine when I was 5. So Nathan gave me his." Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. "That's what we do. We share everything because we've never had enough for both of us." Daniel's chest ached. "I'm not here because I feel guilty, Sophie. I'm here because you're my daughter. Because Nathan is my son. Because I spent 10 years looking for you, even though I didn't know if I'd ever find you. You could have looked harder. You're right. I could have. I should have. I hired investigators and searched and called every person your mom knew. But maybe I gave up too soon. Maybe if I'd tried harder, I would have found you years ago." He took a breath. "But I can't change the past. All I can do is be here now and hope that someday you'll give me a chance." Sophie wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "Everyone leaves. My mom's friend left and never came back. The nice teacher I had in 2nd grade moved away. The one neighbor who was good to us got evicted and we never saw her again. People always leave. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you that. Promises don't mean anything. Then I'll prove it. Every single day I'll prove it. I'll be here for breakfast and dinner. I'll help with homework. I'll show up to every school event. I'll be boring and predictable and always here." Daniel looked at his daughter, this fierce little girl who'd had to grow up too fast. "And if you need to be angry at me, that's okay too. You can yell and slam doors and tell me you hate me. I'll still be here the next morning." Sophie was quiet for a long time. "I don't actually hate you. I just don't know how to not be angry." "That's fair. You've earned the right to be angry. Nathan likes you. He talks about you all the time now when we're alone. He wants to show you his drawings, but he's too scared. I'd love to see more of his drawings, and I'd love to know what you're interested in too." Sophie picked at a loose thread on the rabbit's ear. I like computers. At the library, I used to take the free classes they offered. I learned some coding. It was the only time I felt like I was good at something. Daniel's heart swelled. You know that's what I do, right? The company I built, it's all software and coding. I know. I Googled you. Sophie glanced up at him. There are a lot of articles about you. Some of them say you're ruthless in business. Some of that is probably true. I worked too hard and cared too much about success. I thought that's what mattered. He smiled sadly. Turns out I was wrong about what's important. Are you really done with your mom? Like actually done? Completely. She's not part of my life anymore. And she'll never be part of yours unless you decide you want that someday. Which honestly, I hope you don't. Sophie studied his face like she was looking for cracks in his story, places where the truth might leak out. Finally, she said, Dinner's probably cold now. I can reheat it. Or we can order pizza. Whatever you want. Pizza sounds good. She hesitated, then added, Can we get the kind with extra cheese? Nathan loves that, but we never get it because it costs more. We can get whatever kind everyone wants. From now on, Nathan gets extra cheese whenever he wants it. They walked back to the kitchen together. Not quite side by side, but not far apart either. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Daniel settled into a routine. He worked from home in the mornings while the kids were at their new school. Rebecca was getting stronger, able to move around without pain, though the doctors said full recovery would take months. Nathan started leaving his sketchbook in the living room where Daniel could see it. He never said anything, but Daniel knew it was an invitation. So he'd flip through the pages, always careful, always putting it back exactly where he found it. The drawings were getting better, more confident. Sophie signed up for an advanced computer class at school. She came home excited about it, actually talking to Daniel about variables and loops and functions. He helped her with projects sometimes, sitting beside her at the kitchen table while she typed away furiously, completely absorbed. One Saturday, Daniel took them to meet Rebecca's parents. The meeting was awkward at first. Rebecca's father, Miguel, looked at Daniel with barely concealed anger. Her mother, Rosa, cried the moment she saw the twins. 10 years, Miguel said, his accent thick. 10 years my daughter struggled alone. I know, sir, and I'm sorry. I didn't know what my mother had done. If I had known, he didn't know, Papa, Rebecca said firmly. I never told him. I was scared. Rosa hugged Sophie and Nathan like she was afraid they'd disappear. My babies, you've gotten so big. We came to visit when we could, Abuela, Nathan said softly, but Mom always said we couldn't stay long. I didn't want to burden them, Rebecca explained. They have enough to worry about. Daniel spoke up. That's going to change. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to make sure Rebecca's family is taken care of too. Your medical bills, the mortgage on your house, whatever you need. Miguel's eyes narrowed. We don't need charity. It's not charity. It's family taking care of family. Please let me do this. Rosa put a hand on her husband's arm. Miguel, let him help. For the children. That afternoon, while the adults talked inside, Daniel sat in the backyard with Sophie and Nathan. They were quiet, watching birds hop around the old fence. Mom's smiling more, Nathan observed. She used to never smile like that. She's happy we found you, Sophie added, then quickly corrected herself. I mean that you found us. Daniel looked at his children, these two incredible kids who'd survived so much. I found you. You found me. However it happened, I'm grateful. Sophie picked at the grass. I'm still mad sometimes when that's okay, but maybe I'm also a little bit glad you're here. Don't let it go to your head. Daniel laughed, a real laugh that felt like it came from somewhere deep inside. I wouldn't dream of it. Nathan leaned against Daniel's shoulder, just slightly testing. When Daniel didn't pull away, the boy relaxed. Do you think we could get a dog? A dog? Daniel looked at Rebecca through the window. She was laughing at something her mother said. I don't see why not, really? Both kids perked up. Really? We'll talk to your mom, but if she says yes, we'll go to the shelter tomorrow. Sophie and Nathan exchanged looks, and for the first time they seemed like normal kids excited about a normal thing. Not kids who'd had to grow up too fast. Not kids carrying the weight of adult problems, just kids who wanted a dog. And Daniel realized that this was what being a father meant. Not just the big dramatic moments, but the small everyday ones. The pizza orders and homework help and trips to the shelter. The slow building of trust one day at a time. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was becoming the life he wanted. 6 months after that phone call changed everything, Daniel sat in the bleachers of Sophie's school gymnasium watching her compete in a coding competition. She was focused, her fingers flying across the keyboard, completely in her element. Nathan sat beside him, sketching the scene in his notebook. "She's going to win," Nathan said confidently. "How do you know?" "Because she always wins when she really wants something." "And she really wants this," Daniel smiled. He was still learning these things about his children, discovering who they were piece by piece. Nathan was right, Sophie won first place. When they announced her name, she looked up into the stands, searching. When she found Daniel, she smiled. A real, genuine smile that made his heart feel too big for his chest. Later that evening, they celebrated at home with Rebecca's homemade cake. It was lopsided and the frosting was messy, but it was perfect because they'd all made it together. Well, mostly Rebecca and Nathan made it while Sophie and Daniel argued about whether chocolate or vanilla was superior. "Speech?" Nathan demanded, pointing at his sister with a frosting-covered spoon. Sophie rolled her eyes but stood up anyway. "I just want to say that this wouldn't have happened without the new laptop. So thanks, Dad." It was the first time she'd called him Dad without immediately looking uncomfortable about it. Daniel had to clear his throat before he could speak. "You earned it. The laptop was just a tool. Your talent did the rest." Rebecca squeezed his hand under the table. That night after the kids went to bed, Daniel and Rebecca sat on the back porch. The dog they'd adopted, a goofy golden retriever named Buddy, was sprawled across both their feet. Stars filled the sky above them, something Daniel never saw in the city where he used to live. "I've been thinking," Rebecca said quietly. "About us." Daniel's heart started beating faster. They'd been living together for months now, co-parenting, becoming friends again, but they'd both been careful not to push for more. Too much had happened. Too many years had passed. "What about us?" he asked. "Do you remember the night you proposed? Before everything fell apart?" "Every detail. We were at that little Italian restaurant you loved. The one with the terrible paintings on the walls." Rebecca laughed softly. "I loved those paintings. You said they looked like they were done by someone who'd never actually seen food before. I stand by that statement. That supposed spaghetti looked like angry snakes." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Rebecca said, "You asked me what I wanted more than anything in the world. Do you remember what I said?" "You said you wanted a family." "Not a fancy wedding or a big house. Just us and the babies together. I got the family part, just not the way I expected." Rebecca turned to face him. "Daniel, I forgave you a long time ago for not knowing what your mother did, but I haven't forgiven myself for not trusting you enough to tell you the truth. I should have fought harder. I should have believed that we could face it together. You were protecting people you loved. There's nothing to forgive. There is, though, because I kept your children from you. I let Sophie and Nathan grow up thinking their father didn't want them. That was my choice, my mistake, and I'm sorry." Daniel pulled her close. "We both made mistakes, but look at them now. Look at what we're building. That's what matters." "Is this real?" Rebecca whispered. "Sometimes I wake up and I'm scared it's a dream, that I'll open my eyes and we'll be back in that tiny apartment struggling to pay rent. It's real. I'm real. And I'm not going anywhere." Rebecca looked up at him, and Daniel saw the woman he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Older now, marked by hardship and struggle, but still her. Still the person who'd captured his heart. "I love you," he said. "I never stopped. Even when I was angry, even when I didn't understand, even when I thought I'd never see you again. I loved you. I love you too. I tried not to. It would have been easier if I didn't, but I couldn't help it." They kissed then, soft and tentative at first, then deeper. It felt like coming home after a long journey, like finding something precious you thought was lost forever. The next morning at breakfast, Sophie looked at them suspiciously. "Why are you both being weird?" "We're not being weird," Rebecca said, but she was smiling. "You're smiling at each other." "A lot. It's weird." Nathan looked up from his pancakes, studied them both, then went back to eating. "They're happy, Sophie." "Let them be happy. I am letting them be happy. I'm just saying it's weird." But Sophie was smiling too. A month later, Daniel took the kids back to his hometown. Rebecca came with them, nervous about facing the place where everything had started. Daniel's company headquarters was there and he had some business to handle. But mainly, he wanted his children to see where he'd grown up. They drove past his old high school, the park where he'd learned to ride a bike, the library where he'd spent countless hours as a kid. Sophie and Nathan pressed their faces to the car windows, taking it all in. "This is where you lived?" Nathan asked. "It's so different from where we grew up. Is your old house huge?" Sophie wanted to know. "Pretty big," Daniel admitted. "My mother wanted to meet with us there, actually. She's been calling my lawyers." Rebecca tensed. "Daniel, I know. But I want the kids to make their own choice. If they want to meet her, that's up to them. If they don't, we'll turn around right now." Sophie and Nathan looked at each other, having one of their silent twin conversations. Finally, Sophie said, "We'll meet her. But if she says anything mean to Mom, we're leaving. Deal?" Catherine Reed's house was exactly as Daniel remembered. Cold, perfect, impressive. His mother answered the door herself, dressed impeccably as always. But she looked older, smaller somehow. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "Daniel." Her eyes moved to Rebecca, then to the children. "And you must be Sophie and Nathan." "We are," Sophie said, her voice flat. "You're the person who made our mom leave." Catherine flinched. "May I speak with you? All of you?" They sat in the formal living room, the same room where Daniel had spent his childhood being reminded to sit up straight and speak properly. It felt like a museum, full of expensive things but empty of warmth. "I owe you all an apology," Catherine began. Her hands were folded in her lap, and Daniel noticed they were shaking slightly. "What I did was unforgivable. I convinced myself I was protecting my son, but the truth is I was selfish and cruel. I destroyed your family because I thought I knew what was best." "You did know what was best," Sophie said. "For you, not for us." Catherine's eyes filled with tears, something Daniel had never seen before. "You're right. I thought about myself, my reputation, what people would think. I didn't think about what Daniel wanted. I didn't think about those babies. I didn't think about you, Rebecca, and what you must have gone through. Why should we forgive you?" Sophie demanded. "Why should we let you be part of our lives?" "You shouldn't. I don't deserve it." Catherine looked at Daniel. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm just asking you to know that I'm sorry, that if I could go back and change everything, I would." Nathan, who'd been quiet, suddenly spoke. "Do you want to see my drawings?" Everyone turned to look at him. He pulled out his sketchbook from his backpack. "You're our grandmother. I drew a picture of what I think that means." He showed Catherine a drawing of a family tree. At the bottom were him and Sophie. Above them were Daniel and Rebecca holding hands, and above them, smaller and less detailed, were two figures labeled Grandma Rosa and Grandpa Miguel on one side, and Grandma Catherine on the other. "You're part of our family tree," Nathan explained. "Even if you hurt us, that doesn't go away." He looked at his mom and dad. "It's up to Mom and Dad if you get to be part of our lives." Catherine was openly crying now. "That's beautiful, Nathan. You're very talented." Daniel looked at Rebecca. She looked at the kids. Then they all looked at each other. "We're going to family therapy," Rebecca said finally. "All of us. Including you, Catherine, if you're willing. Not because we're one big happy family, but because the kids deserve to understand their whole story, and maybe you deserve a chance to be better than you were." "I'll go," Catherine said immediately. "I'll do whatever it takes." They didn't hug. They didn't suddenly become close. But it was a beginning. 3 months later, Daniel and Rebecca got married in Rebecca's parents' backyard. It was small and simple, just family and a few close friends. Sophie was the maid of honor, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself. Nathan was the best man, his sketchbook in his pocket just in case he needed it. Catherine was there, sitting in the back, keeping her distance but present. She'd been going to therapy, working on herself, and slowly, carefully, the kids were letting her in. Not as the grandmother who'd torn them apart, but as someone trying to make amends, as Daniel and Rebecca exchanged vows, this time with their children standing beside them. He thought about that phone call 6 months ago, the one that had shattered his world and rebuilt it all at once. He'd lost 10 years. There was no getting those back. But standing here with Rebecca, with Sophie and Nathan, with Rebecca's parents beaming in the front row and even his own mother trying to be better, Daniel realized something. They hadn't lost everything. They'd lost time, yes, but they'd gained something too. They'd learned what really mattered. They'd learned that family wasn't perfect, That love meant showing up even when it was hard. That forgiveness was possible even when it seemed impossible. "I do," Rebecca said, her eyes bright with tears. "I do," Daniel echoed. Sophie and Nathan cheered, and Buddy the dog barked loudly and everyone laughed. It wasn't the fairy tale ending they'd planned 10 years ago. It was better. It was real. It was messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. And as they walked down the aisle together, Daniel holding Rebecca's hand while Sophie and Nathan walked ahead of them, he knew this was just the beginning. They had a lifetime ahead of them now. A lifetime of homework help and dog walks and coding competitions and art shows. A lifetime of family dinners and arguments and makeups and inside jokes. A lifetime of being exactly where they were meant to be. Together.